All right. Welcome to today's class, all about negotiations. And I love this class because there's a lot of um, there's a lot of tactics. There's a lot of things that we want to dive into and absolutely have clarity on, because negotiations are defined in our society as something that you're kind of debating over, you're going back and forth with. And in real estate, there's some of that, but more than anything, negotiations are really making sure that a clear picture is painted. So we'll get into all of this as we go throughout. It won't be an extremely long class today, but I really want to go through one. If you guys have any questions around negotiations, like shout it out. All scenarios. This is going to be a lot of scenario class. What would you say? How would you say it? Type of thing. But I want to talk to you guys about all the different times in a contract, not even in a contract, but in the process that you will find yourself in negotiations. Okay, and it first starts with grabbing those leads. You see, a lot of times what people do is they throw up smoke screens. Smoke screens are either a negotiation tactic or they are a defense mechanism in someone's mind. All right. So when we negotiate, we got to make sure that we always keep the end in mind. That's going to be tactic number one. Keep your end in mind. The end has to be in mind when you're negotiating. If it's not, what you're going to find is that your buyers and sellers can clash over things that are just so minor and so minuscule that if you're going to be the voice of reason. The second thing that I want to tell you guys about negotiations in real estate is it's usually not you making the decision on the negotiation. That's one of the hardest parts about us and what we do. Melissa had an unfortunate event happen yesterday. And she will tell you, and I will tell you, Melissa did everything in her power to get them under contract and probably did everything in her power to keep them under contract. But ultimately, negotiations break down in real estate as somebody else's decision. That's kind of the craziest part about what we talk about with negotiations in real estate. We can only help people negotiate, but we have to negotiate on our client's behalf. And it's so tough when what they want to negotiate for is not something I believe or want to see happen. That's one of the craziest parts about why we negotiate in real estate. So I want to precurse with that. You cannot negotiate for something that you want. It has to be for what your clients want. And in order to do so, especially when it's something that you disagree with, you got to be careful, because you'll start to ride fine lines, because it's human nature that our biasy comes out. But I'm going to teach you some tactics to kind of help you wrangle in your clients and where we go from there. So that's understanding. You got to understand that you are not the one actually negotiating your point. You are just the facilitator in the good negotiations. Okay. The second piece is when I said we got to keep the end game in mind. A lot of times, if you're not careful, and I think Darby can attest to this, if you're not careful, your buyers or sellers will lose sight of the actual end game, and they will try and negotiate over something that really should be a moot point, really shouldn't be going back and forth with to get down to the end game. And what I mean by that is, you wouldn't believe how many times I hear my buyer or seller say, this is the end all be all, I'm drawing the line in the sand. And when that line comes up, they start to backpedal, or they start to change their mind, or they start to do something different. And so it's up to us to go. So just like we talk about 3 questions deep when we're talking about criteria and we're going through our buyer search, the key with negotiations is you have to go 3 questions deep too, to really fully, truly understand what it is that your clients want to accomplish through this negotiation. Okay. So a couple different pieces, major points in the contract, or I should say in the process that you negotiate. One, a lot of people don't really realize this, but you negotiate with your seller on price more than likely. Sometimes it's a little harder and sometimes it's not. And so I want to go over some tactics for pricing a home, because you're negotiating with if you have a range in mind and your seller has a different price in mind, you have to negotiate. And it sounds so funny, but this is one of the only ones that we really negotiate for our stance. But we don't even negotiate for our stance. We negotiate for the market's stance. We negotiate for the time we know it's going to take to sell a home if they want to overprice it. We also sometimes, and this happens rarely, we got two Michelles on here. I hope one of them is Kramer if she's listening. I think Michelle and I worked through this one. She had one where her sellers wanted to underprice her home. I think it was Kramer. She had one where they wanted to underprice their home by a very significant amount. And that causes its own burden and its own headaches at the same time. And so negotiation starts on the selling side when you start to talk about price. And then you also start to talk about your commission. So let's dive into those two tactics right there. Commissions are a little easier because what I'm going to encourage you to do is, like I said, draw the key. Sometimes in negotiations and oftentimes you got to get to a point where you draw a line in the sand and don't move the line, right? I'd say draw a line in the concrete, let the concrete set so it can't move. When you're talking about commissions, before you go into a listing appointment, you need to know where your line in the sand is. You have to know that, because if you don't, you will do what I did one time and get tripped up with the conversation. I walked out of there taking, I think it was like $2,300 less than what I told myself, because I wasn't prepared. The buyer, he wanted a rebate. So cold calling, I should bring this up in scripts too. Cold calling around, and he said he doesn't want to use an agent. They're going to be buying a house through the new build. And so one of my scripts for that is, oh, really? Okay, great. What's the new build? Is the new build giving you any incentives? Well, we're not that far into it yet. We haven't signed anything. Great. Would they give you any incentives? And can I incentivize you more? What if they give you all your closing costs to work with that lender? And what if I were to give you a percent rebate just to get the deal done? See, on cold calling, this guy's this close to pulling the trigger on a new build. I'll take 2%, or I'll take 1.8% and rebate that guy 1%. And usually 1% on 500,000, that's $5,000. So I'm telling this guy he can get a win-win. Seller concession from the lender, $5,000 from my rebate. Let's do this. Well, I met with him. He sat down. He read me the riot act. He was the one that, just poked holes in everything I had to say. And before I know it, he's shouting out numbers. And I'm thinking in percentages, and I didn't do my job and pull out my phone and just run calculations. And I ended up giving about $2,300 more than I wanted to. So when it comes down to negotiations, preparation is really, really, really important. I know we're starting with the seller side of things and we're talking about commissions and we're talking about price, but in everything that we talk about, make sure you're prepared. Don't answer the person's phone call if you know that you have to negotiate. If you're waiting, if that person calls you before you're prepared, let it go to voicemail. I don't really love to negotiate all the time over the phone. I like to do it through an email or text message so I have writing. I can think through some things. I can think through my responses. And the better off you are at drawing your line in the concrete, and the better prepared you are, the more that you'll keep calm in the negotiation too. I'll never forget. I was at Starbucks and that guy got me frazzled. There's no reason to get frazzled. There was no reason to shout out, yes, let's do this. There was none. I got back in my car and I'm like, hold the phone. Now that I'm in my car, away from the situation, my brain starts doing quick math that it couldn't do at the darn booth at the Starbucks. And I get my phone out and I'm like, I just got this buyer's agreement signed for $2,300 less than what I was committed to. So be prepared. If you're not, don't answer. But the more prepared you are, the calmer you'll remain, and you won't make those rash decisions like I made. So commissions, just draw your line in the sand, understand where your bottom dollar is, and work on your scripts. It's really the end all be all for negotiations, right? On commissions. But let's talk about negotiating on the price. So Melissa, you have a property. I think it's worth 500,000. You think it's worth 550. You want to negotiate for the market. Try to keep your emotion out and try and make sure that you can back up things with stats, facts, and other things from outside sources. So a lot of times we will run a CMA, but if we don't know how to interpret a CMA to argue our point for us, then we won't be talking around that. So Melissa's got this idea that her house is worth 550 because she has upgrades, she has everything. She has a point to argue against this CMA. How do we talk? How do we get her to come down or understand that her home may not sell at that price point? And does your business condone taking that listing? So a couple different ways, and we can role play back and forth. We can do a little bit of interactive things here, but some of the points that I would do to negotiate on where I think she would be. Yep, Darby hit the nail on the head. Remember what I introed with, keep the end game in mind. So you're gonna, instead of saying, well, according to what I came up with, the market is telling us. Now, see, you said I, right? Hey, Melissa, I appreciate that. Let me ask you, I ran this over. I want to respect your wishes. What did you use to come up with your price? Right. So well, you don't have to role play it. And I was looking at you and I paused because I was thinking, but you want to negotiations. You need to ask questions back to someone around what it is. Get clarity. This is where I go deep. Melissa, what caused you to list your home at this price? And then she's going to tell me something. And here's the thing. I am the professional. I have the CMA. If I'm actually prepared, I'm very confident in my CMA. If you get to a listing and somebody says my house is worth X and your CMA says it's worth this, and you start to panic because you don't know who's right, it means you probably weren't prepared. You need to take some more CMA classes. But if I ask her how she came up with her price, I'm almost guaranteeing that no matter what she says, I'm gonna hear BS come out of her mouth because I have a CMA. I'm the professional. I've done this plenty of times, and no matter what she tells me, it's just gonna be talking points that I'm gonna have to show her that because she has the sixth bedroom doesn't mean she has any more square foot than the house down the road that sold for 500. The sixth bedroom doesn't condone her to gain $50,000 more. I'm gonna have to start talking around that, but ask questions around their spot on the negotiation. That's key. And you're gonna notice I'm gonna say that when we talk about going under contract, when we talk about inspection, when we talk about appraisal. Melissa, where'd you come up with that price? How did you come up with that price? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Boy, we have something to talk about then, because I came up with this. I've got my computer and my laptop. I'm happy to pull it up, and we can actually. Would you like to go through and run a comparative market analysis with me? I'll let you type in whatever pieces of criteria you want, so we can really come up with this together. You're always together. You're not against them. And buyers and sellers, if you use the wrong words, they feel like you're against them. How hard is it to make a buyer come up with a $20,000 appraisal deficit? It feels like you're asking them to overpay for the market. But it only feels that way if you don't know why you're asking them to do that. The reason why you're asking them to price their home in accordance to the comparable market is because of what Darby just put in the chat right there. Figure out why and what their motivation is. So
So when I went to, in my position, I was sent to negotiation school. That very first day, the instructor said, I don't want to ever hear I out of your mouth because this isn't about you. And when you stick to the business side of it, you win. So if somebody would say, I, man, he'd just go crazy on us. He'd go, well, I mean, just scream and everybody have to stop. And he'd go, I thought I heard a word I. And then you felt like an idiot because you used the word I. So Bruce is absolutely correct. The market says, this says, that says. And then if you have to do something where you want to have that conversation, you say we. Well, why don't we do something? Or why don't we say this? And
Bingo.
the second thing that we were taught was, if you're not prepared, don't do it. If you're not prepared to go to that house, then don't go. Call them up and say, you stubbed your toe or your car broke down. Don't go because you will lose.
I am not kidding. Harry, I love I've taken so many negotiation classes and it's all the same. Be prepared.
Yep.
And be prepared and never make it about you because it isn't about you. But in a way it is, right? Because you know that it is about you. You know that if you don't get Melissa to bring down that price, it's going to sit on the market. It's going to cause you more effort, energy, strain, and work. And that's not your job. Your job is to get things sold and get things done and
Bruce,
make sure that you're professional.
What do you think your house is worth, Bruce?
My house? Well, I know for a fact I'm be able to get 550. All of my neighbors are getting that.
Okay, so 550 would be the most that you would want to get for your house?
Well, no, I just think that would be the base minimum. Oh.
Sorry, we get these. Okay, so 550 would be what you'd really like to get out of the house. So at the end of the day, if a buyer came in and said, hey, I've got $550,000, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah, no, that would be basically what I need, yeah.
So what would be the lowest amount you'd take? So if 550 was something where you'd be just super excited, and I'm assuming that's what you meant by that, what would be the lowest where you'd say, okay, still make good money on the house?
I mean, I'm not sure. Sure. We don't, yeah, that's a great question.
So if we look at the market,
I can't hear you. That's weird. You're not even on mute. We can't hear you. I can't hear him. Okay, I was like, man, is it me?
I can't hear him either.
So, okay, so I'm back. I don't know what happened. So sorry, Bruce. So okay. Bruce, if we were able to do some market analysis, and I came in and we came in and talked about, what your neighborhood's selling for, would you be willing to look at a low and a high?
Say that again.
So so we know that 550 would be a number that you'd be absolutely in love with. What if we did a market analysis for your neighborhood, and then we come in and we sit down and we talk about what the neighborhood is selling for, and you and I come up with a low and a high? Would that be good?
Yeah. I feel like that's what I already kind of did.
So you did one already?
Well, not what you called it, but no, I just looked at the what is sold around me. And
I'm glad you did that. One of the things with being on the Keller Williams team is we have people who really spend a lot of time doing market analysis for us. So I want to sit down with them so that you and I can then have a conversation about a low and a high, because I want to get the most for your house. Okay, great. Get away from it. Bruce already thinks he knows, right? So you're trying to diffuse a little bit of that, which means you're probably gonna have another conversation. That's okay.
Well, which I love what you said. I need to do this more. Exactly what you said was, well, what would be the lowest you'd be willing to take? And you might get the people that go, 550. And that's just my bottom line. Okay, great. And then what's the next question? So again, negotiations, it's like 3 questions deep and it's never about you. What's the next question after that?
What's important about
550, or why is that important to you to get that price?
Yep. You can even almost use that question as a statement and then sandwich it, right? Oh, so 550 is important to you. And so I assume it's about, what you're netting. What are you netting at 550?
That's where I was going to go.
They most likely do not know. They just have this wild idea in their head that 550 is exactly what they want, and 550 is exactly what they need to net. But they don't call it that in their head. They just think that's just what they want because it's more money.
And guess what, folks? You might have already done the CMA. You might already have that information. But if you bring it out right then, he might not be as open to listening to it. You just have to read that. And that's why I said, well, look, I'm going to go back to the office and have somebody, even though I might already have it. It might not be that, I learned that, trust me.
And then, yeah. So I would figure out the net, I'd figure out those things, and I'd go through with it. And then my next 3 questions deep would be, I've been a professional in this industry a lot, and there's one thing that we haven't talked about that I've seen happen in these situations. You see, I'm willing to take your listing, Melissa, at 550, but I'm wondering what you're willing to do if here's the thing. We got a 50-50 chance, because I pulled my numbers based upon what the market has been selling your type of home for. I know some other neighbors in the neighborhood have sold for a little more, but the reason why I have to bring this to you is because what I did was I used a tactic that appraisers use. So I have to ask you that I want you to get all the money you can. Like, that is my job. My job is to get you the most amount of money for your home that the market will sustain. But what I found is that the market sustains this over here. And so we have to be prepared for a 50-50 chance. There's a 50-50 chance that house will appraise for 550, but I do want to go over, because it's my job to make sure we're prepared for everything. What happens if it doesn't appraise for 550? What will your decision be? Because you're going to have 3 different decisions. You're going to have a decision to reduce your price down to the appraisal value. 2, ask the seller or ask the buyer to maybe negotiate with you on a difference in that price. Or 3, hold your ground and hopefully the buyer doesn't walk away. But if the buyer walks away, we need to know what our next steps are. Because if that buyer walks away and we have an appraisal that says your house is worth 520, the next buyer that comes to us, Melissa, we're going to have to disclose that to them. So I just want to make sure we understand what we're going to do if that situation arises, because I don't do a lot of what ifs, but that situation arises, and it's a very real what if.
Yeah, and I love the appraisal idea. If that one doesn't work, Bruce, have you ever seen a house in your market that was listed for a long time?
Perfect. Yes, I have.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
It was probably, I looked at it, it was on that corner. I know some people don't care for corner lots. They're a little bit bigger, but you got traffic on both sides of you. I'm not really sure. I don't think it had the upgrades like most of our neighbors and stuff like that, but I'm not really sure.
So could it have been price? In
Oh,
other
yeah.
words, yeah. So how long do you want to keep your house on the market?
Bingo. Yep. Go into that. Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going to wrap up this.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's really what I was going to say. How long are you willing to let it sit on the market before you need to get to X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
We're always going to go back to what Darby threw in the chat, right? Figure out the why and motivation and go back to it. How long? So we accomplished that you're stuck on 550. We accomplished that, but we also accomplished that I'm here to represent you. I'm for you. I can only interpret the market. I tried my best. And then my business has to make a decision. Do I take this listing or do I not? In this market, I'm taking this listing. In a buyer's market, I probably won't take this listing. $50,000 over in a buyer's market when there's too many pieces of inventory, I'm going to have to just make weekly calls to say, will you do a price reduction? Will you do a price reduction? Will you do it's going to be way too much for me. In this market, it could sit on the market for a couple months and maybe even get up to that price. But it all boils down to what Melissa's motivation is. I may not take 550 if Melissa says, well, yeah, once this sells, we'll go down to Florida to retire. So how long will you wait for that to sell? Doesn't matter. We could be here for another couple of years. Okay, I don't know if I'm taking this listing, right? So that's the negotiation behind it. You know, a lot of times in negotiations, we talk about these win-wins. We talk about, you know, this and that and getting your slice of the pie and your unfair share. The reality is we got to figure out where their motivation is, if they're willing to be reasonable, and then make a decision. But the decision has to really kind of be made before you get to the property, right? If, you know, this is what I always say in my car. If this property fits my CMA and my sellers want to be X amount of dollars over that, I'm not taking this listing. It's been a long time since somebody's really pushed my envelope, but I've only not taken maybe two different things, because once you go over the CMA, once you go over this, I can get verbal commitment sometimes. So like Harry said, going 3 questions deep, what will happen if this doesn't sell? How long will it wait? How long will you wait to do a price reduction? Da, 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 da. You might be able to get them to go, yeah, I'd like to test the moderate waters for a month, and I'd be willing to do a drastic price reduction. But I just want to see what the market, you know, I know what you're saying, Bruce, but you're also giving me past sold information, which means that was the past market. There are some people that know that and can tell you that. And then I got nothing back, because that's truth. How long will you wait until you reduce the price? Well, I'd like to wait a month, and then I'd be willing to do a massive price reduction. Okay, great. Let's get started. Get commitment, get those things out of there. That's still negotiations, right? So any other points on that, Harry, with pricing a home for sale?
No, I think we hit most of it. You know, I would tell you this: if you're going to go back and come back again, and he already mentioned that homes in this neighborhood sold, find some of them. I don't care if you have to go back a year. Go into the MLS, find a couple of those that are in his farm or his neighborhood, so that you can then study them. What's different about his house versus the one? Because if you say, hey, well, you know, Bruce, let's talk about the one that was at 2629 Tidewater, which is right down the street from you. Yeah, I want to talk about that one. Now you know all kind of stuff about it, right? And if it can be compared to apples, that's great. Then you can do that. It's all about being prepared, I'm telling you.
Yep.
And guess what? I don't care what business you're in. When I was negotiating with the Teamsters, I would go out and ask Teamsters, you know, what was on their mind, right? Because you know they had meetings and talked about what they wanted, right? So I was just trying to gain information so that I could better prepare for negotiations with the Teamsters. Same things. It's all the same stuff.
Hey, Harry, when I say, oh, is that your phone ring? When I say draw a line in the sand, or the concrete, or whatever you want to call it, what are the 3 outcomes that can happen in negotiations, Harry?
What do you mean? When you draw the line in the sand?
Well, it goes to the line in the sand. What happens in negotiation? You get what you wanted to negotiate.
They get what they want.
You compromise,
right?
Or they get what they want.
That's right. That's it.
So exactly. So all you have to do is be prepared for those 3 things and understand what your decision will be based upon any of those 3 things. One, if you get your way, that's easy. Like you move forward. So really you only got to focus on 2 things. What is a compromise that you'd be willing to compromise on? And in this situation, you know, in my head, what I'd be thinking, and I keep picking on Melissa. In my head, I'd be thinking, okay, a compromise that I'd be willing to do right now based upon what she's saying is if she verbally commits to doing a price reduction in the next month, I'd be willing to take this thing at 550. If Melissa needs to get out of here in the next 6 months, I'd be willing to take this listing, because a 6-month listing, you know, it's not the greatest thing, but it gives me a lot of time to advertise. But if Melissa...
In the class, they tell you that 99% of the time, you're not going to get everything you want. So if you're not willing to compromise, then don't go and negotiate.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to walk us into. And the other thing that we have right there is if Melissa says the compromise is you take this listing at 550, I don't have any time frame to go anywhere, and that I will think about a price reduction if it doesn't sell. That might not be the compromise I'm looking for, and I might have to make a decision right there, right? Or I might have to say, okay, I understand that. Here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to take your listing, and over time, after some analytics, if we're not getting any showings, if we are getting showings and our feedback's overpriced, let's talk about this in 2 weeks. Because if you're not willing to do a price reduction, and that's the only feedback we're getting, I can't tell you I'm willing to continue to work for you, because it's not that I'm not working for you. I feel like I'm working against the market and you, and I just know that doesn't work. And so that might be the compromise. I take a 2-week listing. I take a 1-month listing type of thing. I will cross out right in front of their eyes, get rid of what I thought maybe might be a 6-month listing, and I'm only willing to take your listing for a month. Because in 1 month, I'll generate a lead. Even if I spend the money on marketing and photos and the time, 1 month I'll get a lead, and then I'll terminate this listing, and then you're gonna have a bigger issue, Melissa, because now your house went on the market, down, and then on the market with a different agent, and now the market's gonna ask you what in the world happened to you, and it's gonna reflect on you. I'm not gonna tell you that. That's what I'm thinking. So 3 things happen. You move forward with what you wanted to. I talked Melissa into bringing that sale price down to 525. I compromise at 550 with a verbal understanding that we're going to work towards getting this thing closed down the road, and that she's testing the water, and that's okay. I don't love it, but I'll take it. Then the third thing is my line in the sand. I'm not taking this listing. There's no compromising. Melissa's not compromising. She wants it for 550. She's moving to Florida. She doesn't care when that happens. She'll let it sit for a couple of years. That's Melissa getting everything that she wants. And I don't, I would probably go into that understanding that I don't want to take this anymore. So in negotiations, what I'm getting at, you guys, is you cannot be frustrated if you don't walk out of there with that listing, because there was a 1 in 3 chance that it was going to happen that way. And I know we're only talking about pricing the home right now, but sometimes you have to negotiate on your commissions. Sometimes you have to negotiate on your marketing piece. Sometimes you have to just sell the crap out of yourself or whatever that person wants to hear because they're thinking about going with another agent. Either way, shape, or form, you're negotiating. And so you have to be okay with the 3 situations that could arise. Because if in negotiations, what do they tell you to keep out of? I said that wrong. They tell you to keep your emotions out of it. As soon as you bring your emotions into it, the other party has the upper hand. So just make sure you understand those 3 things.
And in negotiations, there's a myth. And so I think this is a perfect time to bring it up. I've had buyers and sellers, and I've had other people who say, let's start high because we know we're going to get to X, or let's start low. Let's offer low and they can raise their price. The problem with doing that is not everybody takes the emotion out of it, right? So I just really ticked Bruce and the agent off because I put in such a low offer that they were offended, right? So they don't want to deal with you anymore. So guess what? You will never win. I'm just telling you right now, you think you might, you won't. They're gonna, no matter what I had an agent who will never talk to me again. I couldn't help it. My buyers wanted to put a low offer in, even though I told them it wasn't the best thing to do. They wanted to try it and they lost it. And they came to me later and said, if we ever tell you to do that again, tell us to go fly a kite. They used other words. And I said, okay, my point is, be careful with that. Negotiations doesn't mean you start low and go high, or you start high and go low. Negotiations mean know that there's going to be some middle ground, and where could you start that's going to get you there, but it's not ridiculous and it doesn't affect the emotions of other people.
Yep.
So when you try to take emotion out of both sides, but be careful because they might not. That's all I wanted to say about that, because you're gonna run across that as an agent where somebody says, well, shoot, let's just offer them. They want 300. Let's offer them 240. That's $60,000. What's a good answer for that? Back. Anybody?
If
Bruce?
they walk away or don't respond, will you be upset that you missed out on the house?
Dang,
do
I
that.
like that.
Yep. What's another thing? You know, Bruce,
What's
I'm
the-
glad you asked that. Let me just share a stat with you that's currently in our marketplace. And right now, most listings are going for 98% of the offer price. So at 98%, that would be X. I think we could be a little bit lower than that, but I think if we came in anything less than a number, and I don't have it with me to think what that number would be, but I'd probably have it before I got in there. I think we might make them angry and we won't even get a counter, and then somebody else could beat you out of that house. And how bad do you want that house? So I use stats, not about what I thought. I try to use stats, right? I'm trying to level with them on a logical basis instead of an emotional basis. Well, let's talk about what they're getting in this market right now. Anyway, sorry.
I have a
Nope.
question.
Negotiations is my fun thing, so I get carried away.
Could you flip it and ask them how they would feel if somebody came, if they were trying to sell a house at 300 and someone came in and offered 240, how they would feel? Or is that over
You
the
know-
line?
You say that. I would tell you that those people that are willing to do that already think that that's how it's supposed to be done. So it would be okay if they did it to them.
Yep.
Oh, gotcha.
It's not a bad question, Sherry.
Right, it's not.
I've not gotten anywhere with the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The mindset of that person is the mindset
That's
of
right.
that person.
Okay.
that's right.
Yep.
They're
Negotiators love
unrealistic
to
begin
negotiate.
with, they're gonna be unrealistic at the other end. Yep.
Okay.
Bingo. Yeah. If they're unrealistic, their answer is going to be unrealistic. But in their mind, it's their world, and that's what they'll think.
Okay.
I don't get anywhere with it. It's not a bad question, but I don't ever get anywhere.
Okay.
Yep. So that's being prepared, right? This is so great, Harry. What Carrie just said is if you know the price range that they're looking at sells for 98% or more of list price, then make sure you guys walk into everything understanding the 1% rule, really, right? If it's $500,000, 1% is what? $5,000. So if an average list to sales price is 101 to 103% of list price on a $500,000 property, what's 103%? 515, right? So that's being prepared. That just that 1% rule. Just always know what 1% is of the house. If it's 475, it's $4,750. And then you can basically do the math backwards, right? So it sounds like the lowest that they might take for this property, Harry, might be 490. And you guys want to come in at 430, you know? So he's not wrong. Be prepared. List the sales price is another good one for sure. So that's that. We talk a lot of time to talk about negotiations in its entirety. And we talked about, selling the house, but a lot of what you do is all of those things combined are what you do elsewhere. Now let's get into, unless anybody else has any questions about it, let's get into the negotiations around making an offer on a house. We might flip back and forth between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. Slow me down if I don't say now I'm on the buyer's side, and because I say something you're like, wait, what? But we're gonna be making an offer on a property. And has anybody ever heard the terms greasing palms? Right? Harry and Ed. Greasing palms means shaking hands and kissing babies. It means you need to, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much you don't want to, the first step when you're working with a buyer is to try to make a relationship with the other agent. Now, when I say that, I watched one of my recordings last time I did a negotiations class, and I didn't dive into how to make a relationship with another agent. A lot of people, when I said that, thought, well, I need to be fun. I need to be excited. I need to get them on the phone. I need to build rapport with them. building rapport with somebody is tailoring your personality to their personality. Come on. And what I mean by that is I had somebody say, Bruce, I tried to build rapport. I called them like 3 times. I followed up with my voicemail. I followed up with a text message. I sent them emails, and they sent me an email back that said, I'm not getting back to anybody that keeps blowing me up. And I'm like, I didn't say blow them up. I didn't say blow them up. I said, try to build a relationship, try to build the rapport with them. So what that means is if they don't answer, don't be the crazy psycho ex girlfriend or boyfriend, right? Try just means get your tactics down. Hey, Bob from Remax, this is Bruce. Couldn't think of a name right there. Hey, Bob.
That was my first guy with Remax. That's great.
Hey, Bob, this is Bruce from Keller Williams. Hey, I know that the market's crazy. You're probably getting overinundated with phone calls. I just wanted to let you know we're going to be submitting an offer on your house on 123 Main Street. I really, really, really would like to know what's important to you and your sellers, because the last thing I want to do is put together an offer that just wastes your time reviewing it. If my buyers can't afford this property because of where all the other offers are at, I don't want to waste your time or my time. Give me a call back when you get a chance. I know that you're busy because this house looks like it's going to be going for like a hotcake. If it's better for you, I'll send you an email. And then leave my phone number, hang up, send them an email. The email is going to say the exact same thing. I don't want to waste your time nor my time. I know that you're busy, but the last thing I want you to do is spend 10, 15 minutes reviewing a contract that doesn't even stack up. Let me know what's important to the seller. And then they might get back to you. And if it's a short response, type A, they're too busy, they're not gonna make much of a rapport. But you get that person that calls you back, they start to overspeak, they start to overtalk. And what I mean by overspeak and overtalk is they give you more than they should. They give up their fiduciary duty. I have an agent right now who's done this. And this is why negotiations, it's very important. It's very, very, very important to know, one, what is your client's end game? And also to ask questions in a way that you can start to pick up on that other agent. Okay. So my buyers looked at a property. It was listed for $550. They price reduced it one time or two times, one to $525 and one to $500 or $499, $500. And so my buyers call me and they say, Bruce, this is the house that's going to cause us to get our house in the market. So this was a buy sell lead that I gave no weight to. On my pipeline, they were number 2. In one fell swoop, they became a number 10 or a 9 because we still had to figure out some things, right? But they were like, this is the house that is going to cause us to put our house on the market. And Bruce, I'm so sorry. We already saw the house with the other agent. I said, well, geez, what are you doing? I'll show you the house. They're like, I know, I got antsy. I was online. I started typing in, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call. Next thing I know, this lady says she wants to show me the house. And I forgot to tell her that I was working with you. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. If you want to work with me, great. It sounds like you already got the steps started. What do you want to do? They're like, no, I want to work with you. Like, that lady sucked. I said, oh, really? Tell me more about this lady. And they proceeded to tell me, they're like, yeah, this lady, she didn't know anything about the house. She told us the entire life story of the sellers. And I'm like, fantastic. What else can you tell me? I think they're getting a divorce. They really want to get out of this house. They don't have any money to put into it. Perfect. Let me call this agent. So I call the agent and I don't connect the dots. Okay. So step number 1, don't connect the dots in that situation. You do not want them to realize they're losing a buy sell lead. It causes that angst inside of them. It causes that, like, you're working with these people? No, I'm working with these people. I already showed them the house, right? So I didn't connect the dots. I don't want that agent to know she actually already showed my buyers that house. She's gonna know at closing maybe, Or if she's smart, she'd look at the contract and look at the actual names, but she hasn't yet. So I called that agent. I said, hey, look, my clients are looking to make an offer on your house. First, I need to know if you guys are willing to take a contingent offer. And she says, you know, we've been on the market for a little while. I haven't been asked that question yet. Step one, I know that this agent has not done her job. That was incredible to me. This house has been on the market for 2 months and not one agent has called her to say, I have a contingent buyer thinking about making an offer.
Or she hadn't had a conversation with her seller about it?
I know, it was wild. So right away, I know I've got this lady by the horns. I can trip her up any way that I know how. And I'm going to do it because I'm negotiating for who? I'm negotiating for my buyers. I don't love to beat people down. I do and I don't. If you piss me off, I'll love to beat you down. But if you're just nice and sweet and innocent, like I don't like to beat you down. I just do. So I call her, ask her. She has no idea. She's going to get back to me on it. And then I said, so tell me why this thing isn't selling. It's 10 acres. I think you guys had it. I always stroke their ego. Always stroke their ego. I think you and your sellers had it priced, priced right. At the beginning. And she goes, I know. I can't believe it's not selling. I said, what do you think's causing it not to sell? She's like, well, I think there's probably about $100,000 worth of work that needs to happen on the house. There was a pipe burst that happened, and it hasn't been fixed. So the water's off at the house. Have you seen the house yet, Bruce? I said, no, keep going. She just continues to ramble for 20 minutes. I learned that the sellers are getting a divorce. It's not amicable. Every time that she has to go to them and ask them a question, it takes them like 4 days to get back to her. And they just want out. And then I said, wow, that's a lot going on. I've been doing this for a little while now. And I condone you for, putting up with that situation. Those are one of the hardest ones. And then she says it. She says, yeah, these guys are really starting to get under my skin. So you guys have a house to sell. You guys really want this one, but you guys haven't seen it yet. I said, no, but we're gonna see it. She said, cool. If you guys, I gotta say, just if this is something you remotely want, I'll get them over the contingency. Just let us know what you want to make an offer on, and I'll be rooting for you. So I'm like, perfect. I have myself on speakerphone. My buyers are standing there right in front of me. I mean, they are in awe, and they're like, so do you think we could offer like 475? They just came down another 25,000. And I was like, I think we're going to offer 450 and maybe hopefully negotiate to 475. And they're like, we don't want to upset them. We don't want to piss them off. Oh, you're not going to piss that lady off. She wants this gone. She's going to sell our offer to them, and I'm going to make sure of it. Long story short, guys, we are under contract at 450. The title company, so as is, we had to put an as is clause in. The title company came back and said they need an updated survey. It's going to cost about $2,000. The sellers asked us if we'd pay for that survey. And my response back was, well, no, we're not going to pay for that survey. Wasn't there something off with that survey? And then we just paid $2,000 for something that's basically going to be worthless to us. It's going to be in the seller's possession if we back out. I need your sellers to do this. And then I said, you think we can get this done, right? Like, I know you want to get out of this deal, but for us, like, we just got our house on the market. Like, we're still trying to get it under contract. We could go find something else. And I'm afraid that if your sellers make my buyers pay for that, they're probably just going to go find something else because we're not even under contract on our contingency yet. And then she was like, well, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get this thing done. So just tell your buyers that we're going to get a survey done. If my sellers pay for it, great. And I know what she's saying. She's willing to give up her commissions to get the deal done. So I don't know who's paying for it, but now they're paying for a survey even after they told us they wouldn't. Build rapport with that agent any way, shape, or form that you can, and understand that questions aren't off the table until the other side takes them off the table. So let's flip roles for a second. So when I'm on the selling side, so in our market, we're in a seller's market. Who automatically going into a conversation, who has the upper hand on negotiations?
Seller.
The seller. And you as the seller's agent. So as we flip roles, here's what I want you guys to do. One, do recognize when you have me on the phone trying to get you into a conversation. I got Erin, her name's Erin Brady. I got her into an easy conversation. I just said, hey, my name's Bruce. I'm just testing the waters. I'm seeing if you guys are open to contingency. How's your day going? It sounds like you're busy. Oh no, I'm not busy. I just got done working out. Oh, cool. With the gyms closed down, where do you work out? Oh, I just went on a run. I go on a run. I'm like, oh man, I've never been a runner. I can do home workouts. I don't want I'm the gym. I don't give a crap. And I just keep going. And then she gives me everything I need. But if I would have just jumped into it, hey, will your sellers take a contingency and be a robot? I don't think I'd know as much as I know right now. On the flip side of it, make sure you don't get into that situation. Whenever you are asked a question that they want an answer for, don't answer it. Even if you know, here's what you say. Oh, that's a great question. Before I speak on behalf of my clients, let me go back to the sellers and see if they're open to that. Gives you time to think. It gives you time to mull it over. And I don't know how many times my sellers or my buyers tell me, this is what we want, X, Y, Z, or whatever. And then I go back to them and ask them the same question now that it's actually coming to fruition, and they give me a different answer. So like I said, even if you know the answer, be careful stating the answer.
Okay, so I know people were, oh, sorry, Bruce. So sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say the other thing with it is when you already know an answer from your clients and you just are able to spout it out really quickly, guess what that tells me? Tells me you know other things too. You and your sellers have had a long discussion, so I'm going to try and get a lot of things out of you right then and there.
In negotiations, they teach you to shut up.
Yep. And that's why, like this lady, go ahead, sorry.
Well, so I want to play the seller role again. And you guys were in the class yesterday with Jesse. So a buyer sends in a contract and it says as is. What do you want to communicate to your seller who's really excited because the offer is going to say as is? What do you tell your client? You're the seller, it's agent. What are you going to say? Anybody?
That they still have a right to back out if they don't like something on the inspection.
Yep.
Keep your emotions out of it.
Yep. And as is, guys, I got to, if I'm working with the seller, don't get excited about as is, because once that inspection's done, if there's something major, they can get out of it. As is probably means the little things that aren't going to cost you a lot of money. But if your roof's bad or your air conditioning's bad, they're not going to take your house. I just want you to know that when we accept this offer.
Yep.
As is, and you know what? Guess what? When you get an agent, if Bruce was to say fantastic as is, they haven't done their home. They could be a seasoned agent who hasn't done their homework and learned about contracts. So just be careful for your sellers.
The contracts already say as is.
Yeah, we were always taught, speak your piece quickly and then shut up. You don't need to say a lot. And Bruce is right. You'll got agents out there that'll tell you. I had this lady tell me that my daughter wanted to buy a horse farm. When I got off the phone with that agent, they weren't buying that horse farm. The stuff she told me, I couldn't believe she was telling me this stuff. Well, the barn does this, and then it floods out during this, and it does this. I'm thinking, holy mackerel, what is she doing?
Yep.
But anyway, now, they also teach you what Bruce just said. If you're going to be sterile, as they called it, and go right into, well, so let me ask you that. If you don't build some kind of rapport, and it's usually just a quick story. Hey, Bruce, is that your Mercedes out there? When you pull up to a house and they're the agent in there, is that your car? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right? I just made them feel really good.
Stroke that ego.
Yeah, it's that easy. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, stroke that ego. Anything you can do to compliment them, you know how many times I'm on the phone and I'm like, oh yeah, you sound so good over the phone. Like, man, you've really been doing this for a while, haven't you, Mr. or Mrs. Agent? Melissa.
Bruce, one of my questions for you is, how often would you call the listing agent before you actually see the home?
Not very often, only in these
Okay.
one-off situations where my clients call me and say, hey, I've already seen the home with the agent. We have a home to sell. We cannot buy. We're not pre-approved. I call there because I'm like, oh crap, I don't want this other agent following up with this lead. If they have a lead, I want to know who this other agent is. I want to know what they want. And the bigger thing is because this situation, this was the driving factor that was causing them to put their home on the market. I got to know if I don't want to get photos, I don't want to get this thing on the market pre-approval and then make the phone call or the offer and say, here's our contingency. And they say, no, this is a divorce. Like they'll sit on this thing for a year before they take a contingency.
Yeah.
So not very often, Tim. It depends on the situation.
So usually you'll be building those reps and having those phone calls after you know you're going to submit an offer.
Yes, that's a good question, Tim. I don't ever call a bunch of agents and try and build rapport before I know. It's a waste of time. Your clients are only making an offer on one property. And the last thing you want to do is get the selling side's hopes up. So on the sell side, be careful with the amount of numbers that call and say, yeah, we're probably going to be submitting an offer. Don't take that for an answer. Go, okay, great. Well, when you say probably, what kind of chance are you giving it? 50-50? Are you guys 100% sure you're going to be bringing an offer? What time can I see it? Those types of things. So like I said, switching roles and going to the selling side, Aaron, the other agent, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm not really sure if they'd entertain a contingency. We've really never talked about that. You just say, oh, that's a great question. Yeah, before I answer on behalf of my clients, I think I know what their answer is, but the house has been on the market for a little bit, so let me see if it's changed. I'll give you a call back. I may or may not know what they've already said, but I don't like to give up an answer when I'm on the selling side of things. When I'm on the upper hand of negotiation, I don't like to give up things. So if it's in a buyer's market and I'm a buyer's agent, it's totally different. I don't care. I don't need to build rapport with the listing agent. The listing agent's going to start building rapport with me, because in a buyer's market, there are fewer buyers out there than there are homes for sale, which means the agent on the buy side has the upper hand, which means the buyers are starting to get money off, inspections, all of those things, right? So in the seller's market, Erin needed to not tell me that she didn't have this conversation, that they're divorced, I think I know the answer, but before I speak on behalf of my clients, let me make a phone call and I'll call you back. Hey, I'd like to knock out any other questions you guys have, and make sure I can, get this all out in one stance with my sellers. Just stay stoic, stay factual, and you guys don't answer any of the questions, because all the questions that agent's asking you needs to be answered by your sellers. And I will tell you that when you're first starting out, it's better to get off the phone, even if you know the answers, to just collect your thoughts and just be one with that negotiation.
Knowledge is power. It's like in poker, right? Why would Bruce want to show me one of his cards? So that I then know I've got a better chance of winning by doing that. It's the same kind of thing, right?
Yep.
You tell him, well, yeah, they'd be open to contingencies, and yeah, they're getting a divorce. You now just gave the buyer the power. You want to keep the power. If you're representing the seller, you don't want them to know you have this, what's going on with those sellers. And you're going to get a ton of buyers who call and say, so why do your sellers want to sell their house? Or, what's their motivation? Or are they in a hurry to sell? And all of a sudden Bruce goes, oh my God, yes, they've got to get to Florida by this date. Bruce just goes back to his buyer and goes, yeah, we're going to offer 10 less. They're in a crunch, right?
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. So that's what Bruce said. You just get off the phone, then you call them back later and you go, hey, listen, I talked to my sellers, blah, blah, blah.
All emotions, stay out of it.
Quick and short.
Yep. So let's go back to the buyer side of things. When you're calling, you're going to try and build rapport, stroke their ego any way, shape, or form that you can. But you do want to accomplish something on the phone. And what I like to precurse with, and I'm going to give you guys some questions that I ask the listing side of things. And then I also am going to tell you guys I'm on the listing side a lot, and I can't stand those long-winded conversations, but when I'm on the buy side, I can't stand them, and I try and have them all the time. Recognize who you're talking to over the phone, and make sure that you ask the questions that you need to ask, but fall on the how do I say it? So here, I'll just give it to you. I don't know how to explain it. When I call a selling agent, this is what it sounds like. Caleb. Hey, Caleb, this is Bruce with Keller Williams. Hey, man, I'm sure you're getting a lot of phone calls on your listing. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I got to ask you a few questions because I think my buyers are going to be making an offer on the home. And then I try and build rapport right here. And then here's all the questions that I try to get out as I'm building rapport. So we don't have to go through the long-winded thing, but I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to probably figure out if this guy, I can stroke his ego a little bit, and then I'm going to ask another question. But here's the questions I'm asking. One, hey, besides price, what's most important to your seller? You don't have to ask if price is important to your seller. It is important. The almighty dollar is too important to everybody. But when you say besides price, if price isn't there everything, the other agent is going to go, well, yeah, you know what's important? Importance that to get them to Florida. Importance for them to have some time back in the home because they're contracting on a new build. Important to them is X, Y, and Z. Important to them is not having to fix anything on inspection. No, actually, yeah, it's an investor. What's important to them is pretty much money. So what's important to them? It allows the focal point. If you say, well, is money important to them? The answer is going to be yes. What kind of timelines are important to your seller? Then you're only going to get timelines, but there could be something else that's important. So just say what's important to your seller. The next thing is say, hey, a lot of times agents aren't allowed to give me what your highest offer is, and I don't expect you're any different. But would you be willing to play the hot and cold game with me? And most people will say, sure, if they know what it is, or I'm not sure what you mean. Well, I know that fiduciarily you can't tell me what the highest offer is, but can you tell me if I'm hot or cold? If I say, if the house is listed at 500, is the highest offer, around 510? You're warm. Okay, is it around 515? You're getting colder. Oh, is it around 407 or 507? You're getting pretty warm. So some agents will give you that because it's not really a breach of what they're allowed to do. And a lot of agents want to tell you. A lot of agents don't want to get off the phone with you. So I play the hot and cold game. What's important to you about the seller over price? And then try and figure out why the seller's selling. Do not start with why is the seller selling. Most agents know that you should not be disclosing that. But by talking to them about what's important to the seller, playing the hot and cold game, you're building rapport, and then all of a sudden they just started to get so used to answering your questions. Well, why is the seller selling? And sometimes they just spill it. But those are the most important things that I ask, and then I follow up with, okay, great, I'm going to get this offer ready, and then I'm going to set expectations with them. I'm going to get this offer ready. Do you want me to give you a call when I submit so that way you take and you recognize an offer to the voice? Or would you rather just have me send you the email and not give you a phone call? I want to respect your time, and I know that you're getting probably a lot of phone calls from this. I myself, I don't care for phone calls with the offer. I don't mind. I don't really care if you ever call me. It is going to affect you. Most of the time I will go with the agent that called me. But if you don't call me again, I don't care. If we already had one conversation, I'll remember. Don't worry about it. But some agents absolutely need to be called. Their minds will not connect the dots. You want to make sure that your offer doesn't get accepted because you didn't build a relationship or call. There's so many times that I get my offer accepted because I was the only one that called the agent, or I was the only one that respected the agent's wishes. So the couple other questions I ask is, would you like me to call if I'm submitting the offer? What would you like me to put in the subject line of my offer, so that way you know that it's me? How much time would you like me to give you guys for an acceptance deadline? And here's the other thing I say. I'm not one of those agents that's going to be all squeamish around the acceptance deadline. You see, Mr. and Mrs. Selling Agent, I know it's not a response deadline. So I just want to know what you want to put in there. And if I don't hear from you until the next day, trust me, I'm not the type of agent that's going to blow you up. They like that because we've all been there. Our sellers tell us, yeah, Bruce, I'm going to make a decision on Sunday night by 7. And then it's 9:30 at night and they're like, we can't make a decision. These offers are just too close. And then they wake up the next morning and then your phone's just blowing up with agents. Hey, where are you guys at? My buyers are getting antsy. We haven't made a decision yet. Oh, I thought you said by tonight at 7. I'm like, forget it. Like, you've never been on this side. Hang up. You're done. I'm done with you.
So guys, morale's based on expectations, right? What's the morale you want your people to have that you're working with? High. So what do? You set it up so that it is high. And I'm going to give you a classic example of this and you'll get it really quick. And it gets back to doing your homework. So took over a contract in West Palm Beach, Florida, looked through the contract, found out we were being overcharged, did all my homework, worked with average $3.6 million overcharged over 3 years. So I noticed that Steve Rosenberg was the lawyer that did all the contract, and he was a buddy of mine. So I called, he worked for Cox. So I called him, I go, Steve, hey man, I'm going over this contract. So we went over and he goes, hey, here's the problem, Harry. You're not going to get 3 years because the judge is going to set a precedent and say after the first year, you should have caught it and then you paid it again. So after the second year, you should have caught it and you're not going to get paid again. You'll get paid for the third year. So that was $1.4 million. Okay. So think about this. So if I went to you, Caleb, and said, hey man, I found this problem and it's $3 million, right? The next day I come to you and say, hey man, I talked to the lawyers, you're going to get 1.4. Caleb, how are you going to feel?
I'm going to be pretty upset with you.
Yeah, you're going to go, shit, I'm not going to get $3 million. That's a drag. But if I went in and said, hey, just talked to Steve Rosenberg, found a problem with the contract, we're going to get about $1.4 million. You're going to go like this, $1.4 million? That's fantastic. What's your morale? Super high. I'm then going to tell you how we got to the 1.4, but the 3 million doesn't matter anymore because I set the expectation of 1.4. That's the number you heard. You were happy with that. Everything else doesn't matter anymore. It's the same with your buyers and sellers, right? Set them up. So it's like, Bruce, I would have probably told them to you, I'd have said, hey, Caleb, we're going to get back to everybody by Monday at noon, knowing I was going to have it done probably Sunday. So your morale is based, your morale is based on noon on Monday. When I call you on Sunday and said, Caleb, we accepted your offer, you are so jazzed you can't stand it. There's probably some things in the offer that you might not like or that's not great for you, but you're okay with it because you got your offer done on Sunday and you get to call your seller. And be careful about that. Make sure you see their counter before you call your agent and your seller and you're all happy about that, because it might not be something that's all that great. And then guess what? Your seller's not going to be happy. All I'm saying is morale's based on expectations. Do it correctly so that you have high expectation for all your people and you can set that up. It's easy to do. You don't want them to have a failure because then everything you do after that doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right? That's my point. Sorry.
Yep. No, that's why negotiations is,
right.
And that's why, like, I used to, when I first started, I was like, man, I got to take negotiation classes. I got to figure this out. There's an art to this. There's a science to this. There's a piece to it. And what I realize is it's too simple. The hardest part is just knowing how to go 3 questions deep on negotiations, which is just asking the right questions without ticking off the other side. And also keeping your mouth shut when the other side is asking that many questions to you. So on the buy side, what's important to your seller? What's important to your sellers? You know, and feed off of that. When will you guys be, you know, looking at offers? I know that it's just an acceptance deadline and not a response deadline. I'm not going to be the agent that blows you up when we don't hear back from you after that time. But I do want to make sure our timeline is close to what you guys are thinking. All of those things are what you need to say as a buyer's agent. You'll get more out of them than you think. And then again, never, ever, ever submit your offer without calling or trying to reach out to the other agent. It's their fault. It's not their fault. It's their prerogative if they don't want to get back to you. But in my career, I cannot believe how many times I've heard these words or seen these words in an email. Hey, Bruce, congratulations. Just want to let you know we went with your guys' offer. We really appreciate the conversation you had. We feel very comfortable moving forward with you. Oh, fantastic. I really appreciate that. Do you know what, set us apart? I want to, my buyers are going to be excited. We've been beat out before, and they're going to want to know what did it this time. Well, actually what did it was you guys were the highest offer, and you're the only agent that called me. I had nobody else to call. I didn't even call the second person back to see if they wanted to come up higher in price, because you're the only one that called me. You guys would not believe how many times I've heard that. I'll say, great, can you put that in writing so I can show my buyers that? But call every time that you're going to submit an offer. But the other thing is don't waste your time too much by calling all these properties just to feel out where their offers are at. You're going to waste your time. Your buyer's only going to make an offer on one property.
So let's take that a step further. Why wouldn't you want to, right? Why wouldn't you want to call that? I mean, if your job is to produce, is to help your buyers, right? Why wouldn't you want to get more knowledge so that you can make the best offer for your agent? I mean, for your buyers. So Bruce is right. Yeah, call them. Why not?
Well, I know why. I know why I'm challenging you guys to say call them, and I know why some of you guys won't call them in the future. And that's a good question, Harry, because I want to see these people call regardless.
Yeah.
And
I
here's
always
what.
call.
Yep. And
It's amazing what they say.
Knowledge.
It's uncanny what they say. Nobody's taking negotiation classes right now. It's amazing. Shut your mouth. If you're the one being asked the questions, shut your mouth. If you're asking questions, keep going. But the reason why you always want to call, or the reason why most of the time I get the feeling that I don't want to call, is one, if I'm just ran ragged, I'm tired. We saw 8 properties today. I don't even want to go home and write this offer. Call. Lazy is not a reason. The other thing that's not a reason not to call, and I've done this before, and I've been burnt, and I've learned from it too. Don't call just because you think your buyers are going to put in a crappy offer. I have had one. I've had several times, but the one time in particular I can remember is my buyers basically told me, "Look, we don't want to come in at list price. We want to come in $20,000 below list price." And I said, "Look, the house just hit the market. It's priced accordingly. I think this thing's going to sell like a hotcake, and there's going to be multiple offers." I only did this a couple times, but I would just, if they told me that, I'd just write the offer, send it. I wouldn't call and build rapport out, nothing. The one time that I finally was like, all right, I've been told to make this phone call. Like, this is dumb. We're not getting the offer. Hey, you guys got any offers in hand? And as a matter of fact, we don't. I don't know what's going on with it. Honestly, showings were heavy and then they stopped. What are you guys thinking? Well, to be honest with you, my buyers are dead set at $20,000 under list price. Oh, well, send over what you got. We'll see what we can do. Counter back at $10,000 under list price, first day on the market, because they needed to get to Florida to be closer to their grandkids, and they took it. My buyers took it. I thought for sure they only want it for $20,000 under. But if I wouldn't have built that rapport with that other agent, I don't think they would have countered us. I really got the vibe that they would have just just rejected it flat out. But because I called that other agent, I started building rapport. I said, look, this is where they're at. This is what we're coming in at. I've been working with these guys for a little while. I know that paper in front of somebody can make them move. Just, if you guys want to counter us. And if it's at full list price, still do that. Please don't flat out reject us. I thought for sure they were going to counter us at list price. I would have first day on the market, and we got it for 10 grand under. And I just strongly believe that I would never have got that if we didn't. I would have just sent it. I would have built no rapport. The other agent on the other, I know how I would have been. Oh, these guys don't want it first day on the market. I'm going to talk to my sellers and encourage them to reject it and just wait for the weekend to happen. I think this was even on a Friday. Call, no matter how lazy you are, no matter how tired you are, no matter what you think that your buyers will or won't do. The other thing, like Carrie said, call and fall on your sword. Hey, look, I'm absolutely pushing my buyer not to make this offer, but I wanted to call and let you know that this is what's coming in, so you're not frustrated at me. I just have to do what my buyers are wanting me to do, but please counter us. I say that sometimes a lot too. Hey, my buyer is just a negotiator. That's all he's trying to do. He's not trying to ruffle feathers. He's not trying to piss you off. So what I'm trying to tell you is that if this upsets you or frustrates you, please take that aside and just counter us back with what you guys think is fair, and then let him make that decision. He's an investor, he's a negotiator. That's all he means by this. And that works sometimes too. But if you don't make that call, you just fill their wounds with salt, and they don't want to talk to you, they don't want to call you back.
And so I want to take that a step further. So let's say you show somebody a house, right? They're so excited they want that house. They want to make a full price offer. What do you say? Somebody?
Great. Let me give the listing agent a call and make sure that they haven't gone under contract yet.
Yep. Listen, that's a good one. I always say, take a deep breath, Melissa, because here's what I want to do. I'd like to go back to the office, do the comps to make sure that the price is right. I'd like to talk to the agent to see what's going on with the house and with the people that own the house. And then let me call you back and let's talk about price. And this lady's like, so you think I could get it for less? I want this house so bad. And I go, I want you to get this house. I just don't want you to overpay for this house. And this wasn't even, by the way, this was another agent out of Fort Collins, and they were on vacation, and they asked me to take this person around. So I ended up doing everything for them on this house. And she ended up getting it for $5,000 less, and she thought she hit a home run, right? First of all, she was willing to pay asking. So her morale was based on, I'll pay asking. I became a super duper agent because I got her 5,000 less. And it's because I took the emotion out, stepped back for a second and said, let's do this, right? You got to be prepared for that. That's, again, that preparation. Anyway.
And to tag off of that, I add a few more things to it. I'll say, hey, before you come up with what you want to offer, there's a few things that I need to go figure out. I need to figure out where the comps are. I want to talk to the other agent. Here's what I'd like you to do. Instead of coming up with the price that you want to offer right now with all of these unknowns, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about I want you to think about your highest and best. I want you to start thinking about your throw up point. I also want you to call your lender, and I want you to understand what every $5,000 or $10,000 increment does to your monthly payment. You need to call the lender, do that, start thinking about where your throw up point is. And what I mean by your throw up point is I want you to get to a place where if you got the house at that would be the max you would want to offer. And you'll know it's your throw up point if you find out that after 45 days when the house closes, that somebody made an offer and closed $1,000 higher than you, that you still feel good with your decision. That's what I want you to think around. But I first want you to call the lender to ask them how much of a monthly payment difference it will be for every $5,000 that you may or may not go up over their list price. And I say that because it starts to wrap their mind around that this isn't about the price that they pay. This is about what they're going to pay per month. Most people, when you ask them to come up and bring their offer price up another $5,000 to $10,000, that's all that flashes through their mind is 1,000,000. That's all that flashes through their mind. What I want to flash through their mind is $17. It's only $17 more a month. That's not even a Starbucks a week. That's only one Starbucks for 3 weeks. That's the way I tell people is like, can you eliminate 2 Starbucks a month? Oh, well, yeah, for $17. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move forward. I want your throw up point to be based upon your monthly budget, not the purchase price. And so I just go into a little further than Harry does, and then I call the agent, do all that stuff, and then their homework to me was to figure that out, and then so that way I can say, oh, okay, great. So moving from 500 to 512, you're talking about 3 Starbucks a month. And then they'll laugh, or they'll be like, well, I guess if that's what you're looking at, Bruce, it's weird that you say that. I'll be like, oh, you're not a Starbucks drinker? So then that's 1 beer every week, right? Somebody has those vices that they could cut out to bridge that gap for their monthly payment. Everybody does, and nobody realizes how cheap $10,000 is right now. But it's up to us in our negotiation tactic to bring that to full circle. So you guys get what we just did for the last 20 minutes. We talked about negotiating with the selling side. So you also got to do it with the buy side. You got to, if you're the selling agent, you got to do it with the buyer's agent and your seller. So in real estate, negotiation is such a weird place to try and negotiate. Real estate, we're not the ones really negotiating for our stuff. We just need to know some tactics that help our clients. That's a big part of what we have to hit home today. Because your emotion is out. You're not really negotiating on your behalf. You're negotiating on the side that you're representing's behalf. If you're the selling agent, shut your mouth. If you're the buying agent, ask questions and know when to shut your mouth and know when you're upsetting somebody, or understand when you just can't stroke their ego. When they're just like me, you won't be able to do it. You will not be able to do it with Harry. With all the veterans, you won't be able to do it much. Some veterans you will, but for the most part, we've all been there. We've all done it. We've all overspoken before, and we've all been bit in the butt. So we just act stoic. Not that we don't like you. We just act stoic, but try, because it's just like the law of the numbers. I'd say 50-50 chance you're going to get somebody to overspeak. It's happening more and more and more right now because there's a lot less emphasis on agents taking negotiation classes. It's kind of crazy to me. If you look up to try and get certified as a certified negotiator, there's only 1 or 2 sources that really are prevalent right now. Okay, that's making an offer on the house, going back and forth, buyer, seller side, selling side, listing side, or yeah, buyer side, listing side. Any questions on that before we go over into the negotiation realm, or the inspection realm? Okay. So how do we negotiate through inspections? Now, if you guys notice, we have title deadlines, we have other deadlines, but we don't negotiate over that much. A lot of those deadlines are just bringing facts to the table and having people make decisions and fumbling through those problems. I've only ever objected on title about 5 or 6 times, and it's not really much of a negotiation. It's, I saw this in the title commitment. It's what my buyers didn't like to see, because there's something we got to figure out. So we're objecting to title, and we need to figure out this. And if we figure this out, we'll move forward. If we don't, we're not moving forward. There's not a lot of negotiation there. So I want you guys to understand that in this class, I'm not trying to skip some of the dates and deadlines. I'm just telling you where negotiations happen. So inspection is usually the next part of negotiation. There are some one-off things that you have to deal with, but for the most part, negotiating with your buyer to get them to make the right offer, negotiating with your seller to price the house right and possibly a commissions objection, and then negotiations when you want to make an offer, or you're on this, either sell side or buy side. And then the next piece is your inspection phase. So inspections happen usually about 1 to 2 weeks after the under contract. The deadline is for the buyers, the deadline. So the inspection objection deadline is for the buyer side to submit their inspection item request of repair, replacement, or dollar amount to the selling side. So step number one, to start the negotiations, you need to fully describe to your buyers what they can and cannot do and how it works. So we're going to do that in this video. A buyer has a inspection done. It's very, very recommended that they have a certified inspector inspect the home. That inspector will produce for you guys an inspection report that is very, very, very long and detailed. That inspection report doesn't just show what's wrong with the home. That's why it's so long. Even on a brand new home that has, and mark my words, every new home has issues and has something that comes up on the inspection report that needs to be addressed. But more than anything, it's still a 50-page report typically, because they're just stating what they see and how things operate, and they have to show the buyer that these are in satisfactory working places. So every single inspection report will be very, very long and daunting. So make sure your buyers know that up front. Hey, great, you had the inspection done. I love that you guys think that the inspector didn't find much on the home, which means that when you guys see this report, I don't want you guys to be I don't want you to be overwhelmed. The fact of the matter is he's paid to find everything that's wrong with that home. And he's also paid to document all the things that are still in proper working order. So you're going to have a 50-page inspection report regardless. So when we see this, don't get overwhelmed. Let's tackle this one at a time. Let's tackle this one step at a time. Let me show you guys an inspection report. I would imagine most of you guys have seen an inspection report, but some of you guys haven't. Here's one. Here's one of my last transactions. I thought it was a very, very nice home. Not a horrible inspection report. So this house, I think, was built in the early 2000s, 2001 or 1999, something like that. And as you can see down here, can everybody see my page? Cool. 46 pages. 46 pages, and this property didn't have too much. I encourage you that if you've never seen an inspection report and you've never worked with a buyer or an inspector, to call different inspectors and get their reports so you know how to interpret them. Have an inspector set up some time with you to just run through how their process and system is. I only use inspectors that have a very similar process because it's so much easier for me to talk around it. So I found that there's two types of inspection reports out there. There's one that goes through, and all 46 pages, it's just the areas of the home, and you have to actually go out and seek through those pages what's wrong with the home. I like this guy's inspection reports because I don't have to go out and seek what's wrong. It's up front. I love the way his inspection reports flow. It makes it so much easier for me to talk to my buyers, and here's why. This is a plug for Mr. Terry Ackelson. He's been my inspector for 7 years. I have two that are very good, Terry Ackelson and Rex Flynn. I probably use Terry Ackelson the most because he was just the first person I met, and he has been nothing but good to me and my clients. I've never, any issues that has ever come up, he has went back with his tools to help the sellers or the buyers fix whatever he has missed. And if he can't fix it, he'll pay for it most likely if it's his fault. If it's in his report, it's the buyer's fault. But I like this report because I can go right past the charge. Oh, and his charges, another plug for Mr. Ackelson. Another reason why I use him. Full-blown inspection with both radon and sewer for $500. I can't find most inspectors to do just a whole home system for just 500. He says 500. Sorry, I got sidetracked. He misinvoiced this thing. He says 500 plus 700 only equals 500. His inspection fees are typically $300 for the house, $100 for radon, $100 for sewer. most inspectors start at 500 and then you can get up to about 800 when you add all those extra things in there.
Yeah, radon's gonna be like 350.
Yeah, exactly. He's got his own, he has his own 4K. You guys don't want to see these videos. 4K sewer scope. It's gross, but it gives you all the details you need. He has his own radon test equipment, which is why he's able to keep his costs down. And he's the one actually doing and performing the test. He doesn't subcontract it out. This is why I love his reports. His summary is the only thing that I will focus on when I go over this with my buyers. So what I always tell my buyers, look, the summary, did I pass this thing? Where does the summary end? There we go. The summary ends right here, general maintenance, right? So the inspection report that I'm concerned with, and we're only on page 13. Take away all the headers and the invoice and everything. Your inspection reports, his inspection reports in my mind are easy to read because I only really need to go over about 8 to 9 pages usually. And then what you're going to notice is that he starts with the most severe things. There's no items not operating, not apparent, major concerns, not apparent, potential safety hazards. Then we're going to go through here and I'm going to ask, and I'm going to go through line by line. Hey, garage door safely reversed. Buyer, do you think you could get on a ladder with a flathead screwdriver and adjust the safety reverse? If this is a concern for you and you feel like there might be something more to it, then we can ask the seller to have a garage door repairman come out and service the garage door. But from what I'm gathering here, the garage door reverse, safety reverse is just not working properly. It needs adjusted. The inspector can't adjust something on the home. They can only observe things. Would you guys like to ask for that? Windows, the windows were not tested. There's decorative glass in front of them. Would you like them to remove the decorative glass pieces so the windows can be tested? And I just go through all of these things and figure out what's most important to them. And most likely, you don't have a whole lot to go through. And that's where I go, look, oh, wow, that's awesome. Those are the major concerns and safety concerns. Do you guys know what deferred cost items are? These are just deferred cost items. These are just things that are general homeowner maintenance. So let's read through here. There might be some things that are important to us, but just like this, the sidewalk has some settling. Are you guys concerned with that? Because if you're concerned with that in the state of Colorado, we need to go look at new builds, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, because this is going to come up on every property. Ooh, hail damage. We need to have the roof inspected. So I go through just this beginning synopsis, and that's all I have to go through to create my list. Once I go through and create all of that list, I go back through it with the buyer and I say, wow, our list looks pretty long. Here's one of 3 things that could happen with the seller. 1, the seller could do everything we want them to do. 2, they could do a combination of what we want them to do and leave some of the stuff out. Or 3, they could flat out reject us because they feel like we're not asking for the right things. So is there anything in this list that you guys, find to be a little smaller and you guys might be willing to take on by yourself? And if there is, then I try to educate them to take that out, or make sure if the seller comes back to us, we are okay taking that out down the road. But I want you to know that this list is a negotiation, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. This isn't an end all be all for what the sellers have to fix for you. There's nothing that says they have to. So based upon this list, we need to talk about our worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that list upsets them and they flat out reject us. Are you okay with that? And so right here is one of those things. I remember my buyer said, Bruce, we want them to replace the bottom seal of the shower door after we already had a 15 item list. It was like pulling teeth to try and get them to take out this glass door seal that they can go to Home Depot and buy, because it's already an aftermath. It was already an after purchase. It's not proprietary to that door. But anyways, this is what an inspection report looks like. I love the way he does this because I can pretty much stop at the general maintenance. The rest of the report is going to go through everything that's satisfactory. Footsteps, satisfactory. Porch, satisfactory. I can go through all of this stuff. Now, what you're going to notice is all of the general maintenance deferred safety items, they're still in this bottom section of the report, but I don't have to go seek it in that report. So that's what I like about my inspectors. You guys will find your own style and your own tweaks. I found that makes it so much easier to help the buyer swallow why the report is so long and not to get their excitement up. If you guys don't have that conversation with your buyer, be careful for Bruce. There's so many things wrong with this house. We need to back out of this house. I've seen so many buyers do that and back out of the house. And it's a really good house. And they just don't have the expectation that all real sale homes have deferred maintenance items. Every single home has that. My home has it. Your home has it. Your rental has it. Your neighbor's home has it. Everybody has it. Even new builds have things that will need to be fixed. So just make sure they have that preconceived notion up front, and it makes your negotiations a lot easier. So I go over that list, and then we get the list submitted to the selling side. Again, my buyers already know we have 3 options. Rejection, we meet in the middle, going back and forth. We take out some things, the seller gives in on some things, or they accept everything that we're looking for. Knowing that, we can go into this without emotion. And here's why I say we need to go into this without emotion. I have seen too many buyers and sellers get into a pissing match over $500 on a $500,000 house. 1% is $5,000. So if they're in a pissing match over $500, we're talking about a fraction of a percent. Don't be the agent that gives in and pays for it. Work on your scripts. So here's what your scripts need to look like. You need to let the buyers know, 1, all houses have a lot of these common items. 2, your risk is that we terminate over $500 and you guys need to go out and back on the market and find another property. And mark my words, that property again will have a lot of items that are deferred that you guys might think of as health and safety. Are you willing to go through house after house finding the seller who's going to fix those items for you? Or is it more important that we get you into a home, we get you guys closed so that you guys can move in and move on with your life? Make sure that when you're going through these conversations with your buyer, you're bringing up the end game. Like Darby said, the motivation, why they decided to look for homes, why this is the home they decided to make the offer on in the first place, why this is something that you're going to get through and we're going to work through this, and that in negotiations, sometimes and more often than not, you don't get your way, meaning you have to compromise. So if they have that expectation coming up front, they're more likely to take a compromise.
Yeah.
On the selling side of things, yeah.
Hey, Bruce, have you ever had an inspection done on a home?
No, this is my first. Or what do you want me to say?
No, perfect. So listen, here's why I ask you that question. We're gonna get an inspection done, and we're gonna get things on that inspection, and you're gonna go, holy cow, why am I buying this house? A lot of those things they're just not worth worrying about. I'll give you an example. A hail damage could have hit a tile and ruined a tile. The tile's still good. He's just pointing it out that happened. So what I want you to think about over the next couple of days before we get that inspection. Remember now, I'm trying to do morales based on expectation, right? So I'm setting Bruce up that he's going to get some of these things. I want you to think about those things that you can let go. And, like, oh, there's a crack here, or there's this or that, because I'm going to tell you right now, most sellers aren't going to fix everything. And it's, how bad do you want that house? And so what I don't want you to do is get overwhelmed, because what happens is they get that report and they're overwhelmed, right? But if you set it up ahead of time, when they get the report, they go, oh yeah, Bruce told me all these things were going to be on here. And then you can say to them, Bruce, when we get that report, let's you and I talk about those things that are serious that need to be fixed and those that are just really just pointed out in the inspection. Would that be okay?
Bingo.
Yeah,
Bingo.
Bruce now knows he's going to get a bunch of little things that just don't mean anything, right? That they can fix themselves. And so it reduces some anxiety for them, because those reports can be a little bit overwhelming if you've never done it before. But anyway,
Nope, I like that. Ask them if they've ever done one before. Great. So then you don't know what to expect. So when you get this report, I don't want you to be overwhelmed, because all of the reports are pretty well the same. They're all long. And here's why I say I don't want you to be overwhelmed, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. It's because in my experience, if I don't have this conversation with you, you will be overwhelmed, because nobody has sat you down and put a list of defects in front of you about this house that you fell in love with at the time of the offer. You see, if this inspection report were to truly come out and list all of the features that were wrong with it, as well as all the features that you loved about it, it may be a different report, but it isn't. It is going to show you all the bad things about it, which causes a lot of times for people to, it's so on and so forth, just like what Harry said. So that's on the buyer side. Expectations, get those things. Do not ever let that report get in front of them without having that conversation.
yes.
You are at an uphill battle, and it's Everest at
That's
that
right.
point. So on the seller side of things, the seller side has those three different options, right? We accept everything, we meet in the middle, and we reject them flat out. So on the seller side of things, in my seller's consultation, I will say, great. So now that we've talked about where we need to price your home, we're getting this thing listed. I want to let you know the number one thing that can cause you not to sell your home for what the contract is under at, and that's inspection. We need to make sure that you guys understand that the buyers, no matter what, your house has something that the buyer can ask for, because every house has all of these deferred things. What are you willing to do or not do on inspection? And do you understand that a buyer will be asking you to do something? Even in this seller's market, a buyer has the right to ask you, and I want you to be prepared for that. You can tell them no, but if we don't have a backup offer and we have some validity in what they're asking, just understand that the next buyer, if we don't do anything for these people, the next buyer could ask you the same thing. I'm cool with whatever you guys decide. However, I want you to understand that this net isn't exactly going to be what you net, because you may have to do some things on inspection. Are you prepared to fix or replace or give a credit for anything that comes up that the buyers may want to do on inspection? And the sellers say, well, within reason. Well, maybe, maybe not. Probably not. I think my home is great. It would really have to be something that convinces me. Okay, great. I just want to make sure that you're aware there's a point where they will ask you to fix something. So I don't want this to upset you. It could be a very long list and it could be a very short list. Either way, it's not something that you have to do. So if it's a really long list, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, don't get upset by it. It's just an ask. The buyers are just asking. If it's too long of a list for you, we'll go through it and we'll figure out what's important to you to fix for them. And then that's what we'll offer. And if it's nothing, then that's what we'll say. But we need to keep emotion out of it. And I want you to understand that this net number may not be the entirety of what you have, because we're going to have to go through inspection. So make sure you're saying those things when you're in your listing presentation, or some people just do it after they go under contract and say, okay, the buyer's going to set up their inspection. Here's what's going to happen. Either way, just like the buyer side, set the expectations up front, because that's preparing them for their negotiations. Because inspection, it's all them. You're just the liaison. You are just the person that types it up, gets signatures, sends it over to the other side, relays the message back. What would you like to do? Here's what the seller's response was. And you're just the middleman.
And you can negotiate that. But let's just say it's an air conditioning unit, right? Let's say it's your heat and air. And the seller says, hey, I don't care what it is. I'm not fixing it. Even if it's my heat and air, I'm not fixing it. And then you say, okay, and we can start over. But remember that we have to disclose that. Since we now know it, it's a material fact, we have to disclose that the heat and air isn't working. So two things can happen, Mr. Seller. One, they can lower, so the next person that comes in maybe isn't going to pay full price because they know they're going to need a new heat and air. Or you're going to sit on it for a long, long time because nobody wants it because they expect the heat and air to work. Well, how do you want to move forward with that if that has to be if that's the case? Because they're going to have to make some hard decisions on things like that.
Bingo.
But you let them know.
Yep. So the other thing, the last piece that we want to talk about, negotiations, and we can't go into any one detail. Well, we can, but there's so many. Call Harry and I as you're going through them. The last thing you want to do is be a buyer's agent who sends a list of things that has so many what ifs around it. We call it running it to ground. You can't just say, seller to have the furnace looked at, there's a funny noise. That doesn't say anything. Like the seller can go,
I looked at it, it looks great.
Looks great. Looks like a furnace. I heard the noise. Like the seller is going to send you a resolution back that says, okay, seller will look at the furnace and listen for the noise. And that doesn't commit them to fixing the noise. It doesn't tell them who's going to. So it is seller to hire a professional licensed HVAC company to inspect and evaluate the furnace and make all recommended and necessary repairs and fix the reason why it's making that hum, that bearing noise, whatever that is, on or before closing. That's running it to ground. And you guys won't be good at that up front. So you guys got to make sure that we're going through the inspection objections together. Harry's a brilliant genius at running things to ground. And the more that you run it to ground and there's no holes that could ever be poked, the more that you will have clarity on what you're actually trying to negotiate.
You know, you'll get somebody that'll say there's no electrical outlet plate on room in second bedroom. You know, your buyer, that costs $1. That might be something that you want to negotiate. Say, look, let's not put that on there so that they don't think we're trying to get everything, because that's something we can fix easily, right?
I'll fix it for you.
Yeah, right. I'll go, but he's absolutely right. It's a negotiation. But if you nitpick it all the way through, you're gonna upset the seller, make them mad.
Yep.
These guys are
make sure they understand. Look, you really want to ask for 15 things, even though they had 6 offers on the table. And they're, you know, I can see if they have a backup offer, but there's 5 other people that wanted this house. They may choose to go with one of those 5 if we upset them too much.
And they're going to fix 10 of the 15. You can bet, right? Yeah.
So that's kind of the end all be all with inspections. Just set the precedence on both sides up front, and you won't. Yeah, no, I say that with the light tone. You will eliminate the possibility of getting into a pissing match. It's so often that people continually have contracts blow up over something so minor that once the dust has settled, the buyer most likely would have let that item go, or the seller would have fixed that item for the buyer. It's your job.
Bruce is absolutely right, because let me tell you something. I sit in the same office as Jesse, right? So he goes through 1 million contracts, and he'll look at me and go, "You got to read this. You got to read this." And I'll read it and I go, "That is so dumb." He goes, "Yeah, they probably won't get the deal because of that."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, wow, that's amazing. So I've learned a lot about what people put on for inspections. Some of it's just ridiculous. It's just not. How bad do you want the house? If you don't want the house, then yeah, do it. If you want the house, then you're gonna have to bend a little bit. But yeah,
I got one right now. I'm giving up $450. I can't. It's been probably 3 years since I have. It's been 3 years since I've given up money on anything, and it's that one on Kentmere that Melissa was advertising. It's $685,000. I think I'm at 2.8% on my side. I gave up $450 because of I don't believe it's truly my fault. It was more because I saw the buyer and seller going down this pissing match road, And it was way too easy and way too hard to fathom that we would fall apart due to this. So what happened is my buyers or my sellers committed to moving the radon fan. So it's code now that if your radon fan is in your garage, it needs to be on the exterior of the home. And also the new code is that the extension pipe has to be above the roof line. It used to be able to be 12 inches below the roof line, and your fan for the radon system used to be able to be in the garage. It's no longer code that way.
That's
So
right.
my
That's been-
sellers, what's that?
Sorry, I thought I was on mute.
Oh, so my sellers committed to making that move. Well, in the process, the radon company that I recommended found that their fan was too brittle. And so when they went to go move it, the vinyl started breaking. And because it was my radon company, my sellers basically wanted the buyers to pay for the new fan because it wasn't their fault. They committed to just moving it. But in the process of moving it, the radon fan basically crumbled. I knew that the buyers were not going to like this in the slightest, because if I'm on the buyer's side, that's not my problem. Like, because you guys decided to, you guys committed to moving it. It's not the buyer's fault that it is. There needs to be a fan put in there. I don't care how the sellers figure this out, figure it out. But I have two engineers. I have two engineers. And I asked the buyer side. The buyer side just laughed at me and said, "Don't care. We have a contract that says your buyers were going to make this happen. So we don't care what the byproduct of making that happen was." I went back to my sellers, and before they went into an uproar, I said, "Hey, you know what? I haven't even thought about what a good closing gift would be for you guys. Why don't I just take it out of my commissions? I'll pay $425 for that. New fan, makes you guys happy, makes the buyers happy." They were ecstatic. And I've done this way too many times to know that one little thing, when you put engineers up against each other, it is all about principle at that point. I could see this one going down that realm. And so now I got to the closing table. I'm happy as a clam. I'm taking it out of my commission. So I never even have to see that thing come to me and write a check for $425. I'm just taking it out of what I charge the sellers. So there are times, and I haven't done anything like that in probably 3 years. Just know your audience, be prepared. None of us could have been prepared for that. I was not expecting that. The sellers weren't expecting that. The buyers weren't expecting that. So just understand, remain calm, and work through it.
Bruce was just telling you how emotions took over the business deal, right? So you were going to let $400 get in the way of hundreds of thousands of dollars sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was like my one in Milligan last year. They, in the contract and in the thing, we said the backyard play yard, which cost $350, didn't go. And they put it in, leave the darn thing. I thought my sellers were going to have I thought they were going to go nuts over the fact that they were going to lose that $350, and they got 1,000 over asking. And I'm like, okay, dudes, I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, seriously talking about $350. And at the end of the day, I was like, Bruce, they bring it up one more. If they don't sell this, I'll buy them that damn $350. And they finally go, yeah, you're probably right. I'm probably being unrealistic, right? I go, well, it's going to cost you $50 to move it. So yeah, it's $300. Anyway, but Bruce is right. You got to get your people to not have the emotional side when you're doing these business transactions.
And sometimes you just can't. I could smell that one coming from a mile away, the way that they were reacting. So we're going to wrap this up. Appraisals, not a lot of difference over inspection. Inspection is just more wordy. It's more timely. It's more everything. Appraisal, if you have to negotiate on an appraisal, it's simply because there's a deficit. So you would just go back and forth with numbers and go on, so on and so forth. If it appraises at value or above, you continue at contract price. So even if it appraises for $20,000 above the purchase price, the buyer side does not have to disclose that to the seller side. And you shouldn't disclose that to the seller side. But even if you forget and you do, the seller can't ask you to bring that extra $20,000. The purchase price is the purchase price. So
That's
in
right.
negotiations for appraisals, it only happens if there's a deficit. So let's round this thing out and let's get off this call here so I can get you guys back to your day. If you noticed, we hit home on a lot of different things, and I want to just go over a lot of these major points to continually remember. Negotiations in real estate are not your negotiations. You are most likely the middleman through most of it, unless you're negotiating directly with your buyer, meaning getting them to work with you, which there's not a lot of negotiation. It's just you gotta interview, which isn't really a negotiation. Sellers, you might negotiate a little bit with them on price and commission, but majority of everything we do in negotiation in real estate is not our decision. Somebody say something to see if my earbuds are still working.
Yeah.
Cool. Then the other number one factor, and Harry just hit it on the head, is you got to keep emotion out of it. We touched on that, but how do we do that? Just like Harry said, negotiate when you can, meaning don't be the buyer's agent that waits until the last minute to submit the inspection objection. Because if you're waiting until the last minute, it means that you're one, you may or may not be giving the seller enough time, and two, the seller is going to do the same thing with you. What I mean by that is you want to try and get things accomplished, so that way if emotion starts to make a play in it, there's a couple of days or maybe a 24-hour period, or at least a 12-hour period to let emotion subside. I like to make sure that there's at least a night for emotions to subside. So if you guys watch my contracts video, if you guys look at it, I will always give a 2-day gap anywhere that there's negotiations to be had. And I do that on purpose. So if my buyers want to be clowns about things and ask for 23 items, and I submit that inspection objection, if for some reason I have to submit it the day that it's due, which I hate to do, I always want my inspection objection at least 24 hours before it's due. But if I have to, I submit it, and if the sellers get upset, there's a couple of days before they need to respond to me. And if I have a good agent on the other side, I can say, hey, I'm sending over the inspection objection. I apologize, we're getting it to you a day before it was due. I wanted to get that to you beforehand. It has a lot of items in there, and I don't want this to upset your sellers. So if this upset your sellers, please just go through it line by line. I really want to make sure we get through this. And I know that, my buyers want to do this too. Even if my buyers are thinking about pulling the plug, I'm just precursing with, look, because here's the thing. I say the same thing. Hey, I like to get my inspection objections over at least the day before. I'm sorry it was the day of. My buyers have 4 items on there. I want nothing on this inspection report to upset your sellers. So please, if it does, take a day or so before you guys respond to us. I say that with any dollar amount, any item, anything. That way the other agent goes, oh yeah, if they haven't had that talk, whatever that is, and if their buyers or sellers get upset with it, they might use my words and say, you know what, why don't we sleep on this? We don't have to respond back to the buyer for another couple of days. But you guys don't believe how many times I send an inspection objection, I get a resolution back that same day with like nothing being addressed. Did the seller get upset? Did the seller have emotion come into play? I don't know, but take a day, use that day. Make sure you're drawing out some of those deadlines in the contract, at least a couple of days. So if emotions come into play, there's an opportunity and maybe a chance that these emotions subside a bit and they make a rational decision the next day.
And remember, we're telling you not to be emotional. Your buyers and sellers are going to be emotional. It's
They're going to be
their thing. And one of the things in negotiation class they teach you is, in fact, they have it on the board because as Bruce was talking, I remember seeing it. Win-win. It's not about win-lose, lose-win. It's about win-win. And you want to make sure that everybody feels like they won, right? So it's a win-win. And so that was always the big thing in the negotiations was create a win-win atmosphere, create a win-win negotiation so that everybody feels like they won something, because then everybody's emotions are going to be good, right? Well, we got something. Well, we got something. Everybody's happy. You do it the other way and you're going to tick them off. And Bruce said, and during that 2 days, they can go fly a kite, not doing it. Anyway.
Yep. Nope. I got one more thing. If you guys want to hang on, this is actually pretty good for what we're seeing in this environment right now. So the other thing that I see a lot of emotion come around and a lot of not thinking it through is when a seller wants more time back in the home. So let's say a seller wants more time back in the home. Let's say it's 45 or 60 days. Bruce will always educate my buyers to go into that situation giving the seller free time back. The reason why I educate my buyers to do that is because emotionally it speaks more volumes to the seller side. It is unreal how many times buyers and sellers won't do simple math. And here's what I mean by that. I will say, okay, great. Buyer, you're upset with me. I can clearly tell by your face when I said give them free 60 days back, you didn't want to do that and you don't want to take my advice on that. Let me ask you this. What is that worth? In a perfect world, what would you charge the sellers? What would you go down? I'm not saying perfect world, sorry. What would be the base minimum that you would want to charge the sellers per day for that 60 days? Well, I want to charge them my mortgage payment. Well, I'd want to charge them this, that. Okay, great. Did you know that you skip your payment the first month and that you really only are going to pay your mortgage fees or whatever for that second month? What is that to you? Okay, great. So it sounds like giving them 60 days in that home is worth about $2,000 to you. Great, great. So why don't we do this? Why don't we give this seller 60 days rent back for free? And why don't we take our purchase price down by $2,000? How does that feel, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer? Oh, well, I want this house. I really want this house. Well, I'm telling you, in my experience, sellers aren't going to do the math just like you at first weren't willing to do. So it's going to look better if you can give them free rent back and just reduce your purchase price by the amount that you feel like you're giving up for free. Nothing's free in this world, and we can build the amount into our offer. Well, Bruce, we don't want to lose the house. Okay, so offer them the 450, but charge them $2,000 to live there, and understand that on the seller side of things, guess what you just gave them? 448. So why don't we just give them 448 with free rent back? Free, people like to see that, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. That's why you got upset when I said free. You didn't like to give up something for free, but you're not giving it up for free. What would you guys like to do now after we've talked about this? And then that's when I can get buyers to, now I don't even get them to do it. They need to do it. In this market, every time I put in a dollar amount, it doesn't matter what our purchase price is. Some other buyer's going to give them free rent back because they tailored it to their offer. It helps. That is a huge negotiation tactic that I'm dealing with, and that is winning hand over fist. And when I talk to the buyers about it, they totally understand it. But until I educate them on it, they don't get it at all. Because to them, that's a mortgage payment. To them, that's dollars per day. That's $40 a day, $50, $60, $100 a day. And it just works. Free is what people like to see, and you guys can tailor your offer back.
And think about it for a second, guys. It wasn't free.
Right.
Bruce lowered those $2,000 that they would have got back at closing anyway. So he didn't give it to them free, but they saw the word free. So what their perception of that was, hey,
Psychological.
free rent. He really didn't. But anyway,
It's magical. I've won so many offers by not being the highest price, but because I gave the seller free 60 days rent back. It's unreal how many times I can get my offer to stick if I can get that through to my buyer. Everything we
because they
talked
could have
about
had to
today,
move
guys.
twice.
What's
They
that?
could, if you didn't give them the 60 days, they might have had to move twice, right? And they know that's going to cost them a lot of money and time and effort. And oh my God, right?
Yep. And then
Boy,
same thing on the seller side, you guys. I have too many sellers that want to take the free, and all I have to do is like 30 seconds of math, and I go, look, these guys are charging you the most for that time back. But if you look at the actual net, you guys, that you're making out, pay that fee, because their price and their guarantee over an appraisal deficit is going to get you more money. And they go, really? Show me. And then I'll show them and they'll go, okay, sold, fine. But it's unreal how sellers and sellers agents, they're not doing their due diligence, making those calculations. So on the buyer side, I take out that, and I try and do the math with my buyer, so we put our best foot forward.
that's a good
Thanks,
one.
guys. Anything else on the recording?
Nice day.